The Stellar Dream was not supposed to stop. The luxury space cruise ship, carrying 300 wealthy aliens from across the galaxy, was meant to glide smoothly through the stars. Instead, it now floated dead in space, surrounded by a dense field of asteroids that seemed to appear from nowhere. Captain Green stood on the bridge, his tall blue form trembling slightly. Like most of his kind, he came from a low-gravity world. The ship's artificial gravity was already making him tired, and the stress wasn't helping. The worst part was watching the asteroids through the main view screen. They moved in strange patterns, almost as if they were alive. "Report," he ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. Officer Ray, his second in command, looked up from her control panel. Her silver scales reflected the red warning lights flashing across the bridge. "Bad news, Captain. The engine core is damaged. We're trapped in the gravitational pull of these asteroids. Our shields won't last long against impacts at this range." The captain's 4 hearts beat faster. "Can we send out a distress signal?" "Already done, sir." But Ray paused, her tail twitching nervously. "The nearest rescue ships are all crewed by species like us, low-gravity worlders. In these conditions, they'd be as helpless as we are." Green knew what she wasn't saying. There was one option left, but no one wanted to suggest it. The passengers were getting scared. Through the ship's cameras, he could see them gathering in the halls, their different alien forms all showing signs of fear. Some were floating, their anti-gravity personal devices activated in panic. A loud crash shook the ship. Warning alarms screamed as a small asteroid struck the outer hull. "Hull breach in Section 7. A crew member shouted. "Emergency shields holding," but barely. The ship's computer spoke in its calm voice. "Alert. Current situation analysis complete. Calculating survival chances with conventional rescue attempts, 0.1%. Recommended action. Contact human emergency services." The bridge fell silent. Humans. Deathworlders. The very thought made most aliens uncomfortable. They were the galaxy's newest spacefaring race, and yet they had already gained a reputation. They came from a world that most species considered impossible to live on. High gravity, extreme temperatures, deadly predators, and natural disasters. Another asteroid hit made the decision for them. Captain Green straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. "Officer Ray, send out a priority call to the nearest human rescue station. Tell them." He swallowed hard. "Tell them we'll pay whatever they ask." The response came faster than anyone expected. A rough, confident voice filled the bridge. "Heavy Rescue 1 responding to your distress call. Stellar Dream. Hang tight. We're coming to get you." The crew watched in amazement as a small, sturdy ship appeared on their scanners, flying straight into the asteroid field like it was nothing more than a light rain. The humans were coming. Whether that was good news or bad remained to be seen. The rescue ship Heavy Rescue 1 docked with the Stellar Dream in a way that made Captain Green's stomach turn. The humans simply pushed through the asteroid field, their ship's reinforced hull deflecting smaller rocks like they were nothing. Their pilot moved with a speed and confidence that seemed insane to the watching aliens. When the airlock opened, the alien crew stepped back. 5 humans walked in, wearing what looked like simple mechanical suits instead of the expected advanced space gear. Their leader, a tall figure with broad shoulders, removed his helmet and smiled. His face had small scars, and his eyes showed no fear. "Captain Jack Stone, Heavy Rescue 1, he said, holding out his hand. Captain Green hesitated before taking it, surprised by the firm grip. "We got your distress call. Looks like you folks are in quite a spot." The other humans were already moving, carrying heavy equipment like it weighed nothing. One of them, a woman with short red hair, was scanning the ship's hull with an old-looking device. "Boss," she called out, "hull integrity at 43%. We've got multiple stress fractures forming. This section could go any minute." Captain Stone nodded, not looking worried at all. "All right, let's get to work." Tom, get those emergency corridors set up. Mary, start prepping the passengers for evac. Doc, check for any injuries. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans moved through the ship's corridors. The artificial gravity was acting up, jumping between normal and 3 times stronger, but the humans didn't seem to notice. They walked normally while the ship's crew had to use their anti-grav devices just to move. Impossible, whispered Officer Ray to Captain Green. They're moving in triple gravity like it's nothing. And look at their equipment. It's so basic. They watched as Tom, the largest human, encountered a sealed emergency door. The door's motors had failed, trapping several passengers behind it. Instead of calling for tools, Tom simply grabbed the edges of the door and pulled. The metal groaned, and slowly the door slid open. "There we go," Tom said casually, wiping his hands on his suit. "Nothing to worry about, folks. This way to the evacuation point." The passengers, a mix of different alien species, stared at him with a mixture of fear and awe. A young floater child actually reached out to touch Tom's arm, curious about the being who could bend metal with his bare hands. Captain Stone walked up to Captain Green, checking something on a small computer on his wrist. "We've got about 2 hours before that asteroid field shifts again. We'll need to move fast." He looked at the alien captain with serious eyes. "There's something else you should know. Those hull fractures. They didn't all come from asteroid impacts. Someone's been messing with your ship." Green's antenna went stiff with shock. Sabotage. But who would? A distant explosion cut him off, and the ship's lights flickered. The humans didn't flinch. Instead, they moved with even more purpose, like they had been expecting trouble all along. "Right," said Stone, pulling his helmet back on. "Looks like this rescue just got interesting." The emergency corridors were a marvel of human engineering. Simple, strong tubes that connected the rescue ship to the stellar dream. While most rescue operations used expensive energy shields, the humans preferred these basic metal tunnels. As one human put it, "Can't hack a metal tube." Dr. Alice moved through the corridor, carrying 2 injured aliens on her shoulders like they were children. The ship's gravity kept switching between normal and triple strength, but she barely seemed to notice. Behind her, a line of passengers watched in amazement. "Look at that human," whispered a tall, thin alien to his mate. "She's carrying a floater and a crystal being at the same time. In triple gravity." The crystal being, despite his injuries, was equally impressed. His crystalline structure would have shattered under such pressure on his homeworld, but the human doctor had wrapped him in some kind of simple foam padding that absorbed the shock perfectly. Tom was at the front of the evacuation line, helping passengers through the most damaged sections. When the gravity suddenly spiked to 4 times normal, several aliens collapsed. Without hesitation, Tom picked up 3 of them at once. "Don't worry, folks," he said with a grin. "Just think of it as a bit of morning exercise. We do this stuff for fun back home." Captain Stone's voice crackled over the radio. "Tom, we've got problems. That last gravity spike damaged the corridor's seals. You've got about 10 minutes before that section fails." "Copy that, boss," Tom replied calmly. He turned to the frightened passengers. "All right, everyone, we're going to play a fun game called Beat the Clock. First one to the rescue ship gets Earth chocolate." The mention of the famous human treat actually got some nervous laughs. The humans had discovered that their chocolate, deadly poisonous to some species, but perfectly safe for others, had become a popular luxury item in space. As they moved faster through the corridor, an elderly mist being started to fade, its gaseous form struggling against the gravity. Mary, the youngest human rescuer, quickly pulled out what looked like a simple glass jar from her belt. "Here you go," she said, opening it. "It's got Earth air pressure. Should feel just like home." The mist bean gratefully flowed into the jar, its color returning to normal. Other passengers stared in surprise. Most emergency teams carried expensive molecular stabilizers for mist beings, not simple pressure jars. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the corridor. A support beam was bending under the gravity. Before anyone could panic, Tom braced his shoulder under it, while Mary guided the remaining passengers past. 5 minutes, Captain Stone warned. Plenty of time, Tom grunted, holding the beam. Had a tougher time last week moving my couch. They got the last passenger through just as the corridor started to buckle. The humans acted like it was all in a day's work, but the aliens knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. These Deathworlders hadn't just rescued them. They'd made it look easy. But as the last group reached safety, a new alarm started blaring. The Stellar Dreams reactor was making strange noises, and Captain Stone's face turned serious. This rescue was far from over. The reactor room of the Stellar Dream glowed an angry red. Warning sirens screamed through the halls, and the ship's computer kept repeating. Critical reactor failure imminent. Radiation levels rising. Dr. Alice knelt beside an injured crew member in the medical bay, her hand steadied despite the chaos. The alien's wound was unlike anything she'd seen before, not from the asteroids or the gravity, but from some kind of energy weapon. "Captain," she called over the radio, "this wasn't an accident. Someone shot this crew member." Captain Stone's voice cracked through the static. "Copy that, Doc. Tom just found similar evidence in the cargo hold. We've got saboteurs on board." The ship shuddered violently. In the reactor room, Mary checked her readings and swore under her breath. "Boss, the reactor's going to blow. Someone rigged it to overload. Usual safety protocols are fried." The remaining aliens on board watched in horror as radiation levels climbed to levels that would kill most species. To their shock, Captain Stone and his team simply pulled on basic radiation suits, nothing like the complex protection other species used. "Those suits won't protect you," Captain Green protested. "The radiation will. Will take about 6 hours to give us a mild headache," Stone finished. "Perks of being a Deathworlder. Our cells repair radiation damage pretty quick." He grinned. "Why do you think humans got picked for most of the early space programs?" The humans moved into action. Tom and Mary headed for the reactor, while Stone and Alice secured the remaining passengers. The gravity kept spiking, now reaching 5 times normal. The ship's structure groaned under the pressure. In the reactor room, Mary worked on the controls while Tom held up a fallen support beam. "You know," Tom said casually, sweating under the combined weight and radiation, "this reminds me of that bar on Mars where..." A blast of energy cut him off. 3 figures in advanced stealth suits appeared, weapons raised. "Step away from the reactor," one ordered. "This ship needs to disappear, along with everything and everyone on it." The saboteurs had clearly not expected to face humans. They fired their weapons, but in the high gravity, their aim was off. Tom dropped the beam and moved with shocking speed for someone his size. Before the attackers could adjust, he had closed the distance and knocked 2 of them down. The third saboteur took aim at Mary, but she was already moving. She threw her toolkit, a simple metal box with Deathworlder strength. It caught the attacker in the chest, sending them sprawling. "Security breach contained," Tom reported cheerfully. "But we've still got a reactor about to blow." "Mary, working on it," she said, fingers flying over the controls. "But even if I stop the overload, this whole section is flooded with radiation. We'll need to." Another explosion rocked the ship. The reactor's glow turned from red to white. "Time's up," Stone's voice came through. "Everyone out. Now, we're moving to Plan B." The humans grabbed the unconscious saboteurs and started running. They had saved most of the passengers, but the Stellar Dream's final minutes were beginning. And somewhere on the ship, more saboteurs were waiting. Captain Stone watched the security footage in the Stellar Dream's backup control room, his face grim. The screen showed dark figures moving through the cargo holds days before the accident, planting small devices on the hull and reactor. "Got something," Mary called out, examining a damaged data pad they'd taken from one of the captured saboteurs. "They're after something called the Oracle Crystals, some kind of ancient alien tech." supposedly worth billions. Tom entered the room, carrying an unconscious saboteur over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Found this one trying to break into cargo hold B. Put up quite a fight for someone in 5 times normal gravity. The ship shuddered again. Through the windows, they could see asteroids starting to move closer, drawn by the failing reactor's gravitational pulses. The whole field was becoming unstable. The crystals were never reported in the cargo manifest, Captain Green said, his blue skin pale with shock. Someone must have smuggled them aboard. Dr. Alice's voice crackled over the radio. Captain, you need to see this. I'm in the medical bay, and I just found a hidden compartment. It's full of artifacts, and they're giving off some kind of energy signature. The pieces started falling into place. The saboteurs had planned to hijack the ship, steal the artifacts, and make it look like an accident. When that failed, they decided to destroy the evidence and witnesses instead. How many passengers still aboard? Stone asked. 42, Tom reported. Mostly in the central chamber, but with the reactor going critical and these gravity waves. Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered, and emergency bulkheads started closing automatically. New problem, Mary called out, checking her instruments. Those oracle crystals. They're reacting to the reactor's radiation. If they go up with the ship, the explosion will take out half this sector. Stone made a quick decision. Tom, get the rest of the passengers out. Doc, secure those artifacts. Mary, see if you can stabilize the reactor for 10 more minutes. I'm going hunting. Hunting? Captain Green asked nervously. Stone checked his simple projectile weapon. Something most species considered primitive compared to energy weapons. There's at least 3 more saboteurs on board. In this gravity, they can barely move. But for a human, he smiled grimly. This is just another day at work. As if to emphasize his point, a warning shot from an energy rifle sizzled past them. Stone moved with predatory grace, his Deathworlder muscles working perfectly in the crushing gravity. The hunt was on, and time was running out. The reactor core pulsed with deadly radiation as Mary worked furiously at the controls. Her radiation suit's meter had long since maxed out, but she kept working. To any other species, this level of radiation would mean instant death. For a human, it just meant she'd need some anti-radiation meds later. How's it looking? Tom's voice came through the radio, strained from holding up a collapsed doorway, while the last group of passengers escaped. Bad, Mary replied, fingers dancing across the controls. We've got 5 minutes before total meltdown. These oracle crystals are making everything worse. They're amplifying the radiation somehow. In another part of the ship, Captain Stone moved silently through the darkened corridors. The crushing gravity had knocked out most of the lighting, but human eyes adapted quickly to the darkness. He heard movement ahead. The remaining saboteurs were trying to reach their hidden shuttle. A burst of energy fire lit up the corridor. Stone rolled aside, the movement natural despite the gravity that would cripple most species. You missed, he called out, his voice echoing. Want to try that again in 6 times normal gravity? The response was another energy blast, wild and desperate. Stone could hear their breathing, heavy and labored under the crushing weight. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Moving like the apex predator his species evolved from, Stone closed the distance. The first saboteur didn't even see him coming. The second managed to turn, but in the high gravity, they might as well have been moving through thick syrup. Stone disarmed them both in seconds. Boss. Mary's urgent voice crackled through his radio. The reactor's gone critical. We need to get out now. Slight problem, Tom reported. Main escape routes collapsed. Got about 20 passengers still here with me. Stone made a quick decision. Doc, how's that backup plan looking? Dr. Alice's calm voice responded. Ready, but it's crazy, even for us. Perfect, Stone grinned, securing the captured saboteurs. Just like every other Tuesday. Everyone. Plan C. You know the drill. In the reactor room, Mary entered the final commands and ran. Behind her, the core began to collapse. The oracle crystals hummed with dangerous energy, and the ship's structure groaned under impossible stresses. The remaining humans and passengers had 3 minutes to attempt something that every safety protocol in the galaxy said was impossible. But then again, that's why you called Deathworlders in the first place. The Stellar Dream's final moments were spectacular. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash, but thanks to Plan C, which involved Tom literally carrying the oracle crystals in a reinforced box while running through collapsing corridors, not a single life was lost. Heavy Rescue 1 floated safely at the edge of the asteroid field, its hull slightly dented but intact. Inside, passengers and crew watched through the viewports as debris scattered across space. The captured saboteurs sat in a makeshift brig, secured by nothing more complicated than metal bars, and Tom standing guard. "I still can't believe it worked," Captain Green said, shaking his head. Running through radiation-filled corridors, in crushing gravity, carrying dangerous artifacts, with only 2 minutes to spare. "Ah, that wasn't so bad," Tom grinned, munching on an energy bar. "Should have seen last month's rescue on that volcanic moon. Now that was exciting." Dr. Alice moved among the passengers, treating minor injuries. The radiation exposure that should have killed her barely made her skin pink. She handed out simple medicines, just old Earth remedies, nothing fancy, that worked better than most advanced alien treatments. Mary sat with the ship's engineers, explaining how she delayed the reactor breach. The aliens were shocked by her casual attitude toward radiation levels that their species considered instantly lethal. "Humans evolved with background radiation," she shrugged. "Comes in handy sometimes." Captain Stone finished his report to Space Rescue Command. The oracle crystals were secured, the saboteurs would face justice, and most importantly, every passenger and crew member had survived. He turned to Captain Green with a simple smile. "Need a lift to the nearest station?" he asked, like this had been nothing more than a routine pickup. News of the rescue spread quickly across the galaxy. Videos of humans carrying aliens through crushing gravity, working in lethal radiation, and fighting armed saboteurs in impossible conditions went viral on the galactic net. Applications for human rescue teams skyrocketed. Species that once feared or looked down on Deathworlders now requested them specifically for dangerous missions. As one alien ambassador put it, "When the impossible needs doing, call a human." Back on Heavy Rescue 1, the team was already preparing for their next mission. Captain Stone looked at the new request coming in. Something about a ship trapped in a quantum storm. "Ready for another adventure?" he asked his crew. Tom cracked his knuckles. Mary checked her tool belt. Dr. Alice readied her medical kit. They all grinned. Just another day at work for humanity's finest Deathworlders. As they headed toward their next rescue, aliens across the galaxy updated their emergency protocols with a new first response. Trapped with nowhere to go, call a Deathworlder.